Call this meeting to order. First up is public comment. If we have any, I'll go over the rules. We don't. Going. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, don't fight over it.
Aye.
You're present.
Opposed? Town meeting 2026, public hearing and informational meeting. So the town report or the annual report is out.
There's some copies here. If we run out, there's more upstairs. So if you haven't grabbed one, they're online.
And we've gone over things nauseum. So usually what we do is we just open it up to any questions that members of the public have about what's coming up. So, any questions? Comments? Concerns? Robin?
I have a huge concern that the information about the library appropriation in the town report is based on inaccurate numbers. And that rather than creating a 6.5% increase as advertised, it in fact makes a $10,000, at least a $10,000 decrease of deficit in the budget, and that's before you attempt to apply the salary increases that the select board authorized. The select board knew about this on a fairly early hour on Friday morning because I knew. And I'm wondering why you allowed that to go forward. It seems to me that allowing inaccurate numbers in front of the town or numbers that are so far off in front of the town does a service to no one.
Did you submit a revised budget?
The numbers,
For
the
this?
revised numbers went out Friday morning. And we knew that it would require a special meeting because we had already voted on the warrant that appears in the town report. And as I understand it, that opportunity was not taken advantage of.
So the numbers that were voted to go into,
They're
to
wrong.
move forward that night, we gave a full budget amount and we gave a town tax amount.
Right.
Did you submit a budget that met those numbers?
Numbers that a revised budget was submitted Friday morning. On the 30th.
And is that the budget that got printed?
No,
Did that budget that you submitted match the numbers the board approved?
no.
Well, that's why I wouldn't have got printed.
It required because it was based, because the budget that the board approved was based on inaccurate personnel numbers.
We measured at different points in time. We've gone over this a few times. We had different points of time of measurement on our rough analysis versus some data that was in the background. It was acknowledged at the time that there was nuance and detail that we probably didn't have. They said those exact words.
Nuance and detail is different from miscounting the number of the time spent.
I mean, you left the meeting here, Robin. You and Amy were both here and you guys left the meeting with that number, knowing what that was. So why didn't at the meeting, did you pull out your thing and double check the numbers before you left here?
The number, what I looked at the meeting was a printed out spreadsheet of the top page of that budget that didn't include the detailed sheets about the personnel numbers.
But you left here, you guys both left here saying, great, thank you, and walked out.
Well, I don't know, great thank you was quite the.
You didn't, but you didn't actually raise any issue then. So you left
Because-
here, leaving it as
Stephanie,
is.
There was no way for anybody to know until you started plugging the numbers into the spreadsheet how far off what you voted on was.
Okay, so you left here with numbers that were approved, but you did not submit a budget that matched those numbers. And so where did the numbers in the town report match those numbers, correct? And they show a 2.3% increase in administration and a 6.4% increase overall in funding values, correct? Because I have the 26 budget in here compared to the 27 budget, and the numbers that are in here to come through are showing a 2.3% increase, which is because there's a health insurance change, which had a savings. Otherwise, it's more than that. It's the 3.2% we talked about in wages is in here. And then all the rest of it is the corresponding insurances, which we don't have, they calculate automatically. There's a health insurance change, which is usually from somebody going from one plan to another.
That was last year.
And well, last year they were at 91,000. This year they're 86. So somebody switched plans in there or is switching. And then you have the retirement one.
I'm Amy Grosnick, I'm the director of the library. I would draw the select board's attention and the public's attention to the critical lines in the revenue side of the budget. The top line being the tax appropriation from the town, which is a reduction over the current year, not a 6% increase. And the 100% increase to the library trustees' contribution to the revenue, which was when originally in the original budget was intended to offset much greater wage increases, which clearly did not make the cut. And so while you can talk about a 6% increase to the bottom line of the library's overall budget, in fact, the town appropriation is going down. This is not a 6% increase to the taxpayers. It's a 100% increase to the library trustees fundraising bid.
I don't think anybody said it was a 6% increase to the taxpayers. It's a 6% increase in the budget.
That's correct. However, the way that was achieved was by putting the burden on the library trustees to raise $50,000.
It says that in here.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think it's disingenuous to speak about increasing the library's budget as though the town taxpayers are bearing that responsibility. They are not. They are not bearing a burden of an increase to the library's budget. They're seeing a tiny little reduction. And meanwhile, the library trustees will be going out to individuals in the community with their hands out saying, town select board saw fit to reduce the taxpayers' burden for the library's operations, and now we are here to ask you individually to make up the difference.
That wasn't a select board decision, that was what you brought here.
No, you decided on the town
No,
appropriation.
you guys brought to, that you presented your budget saying that your board was going to raise more money. That wasn't a select board thing saying you guys have to do this, that was what you chose to do.
Yes, and the
So-
purpose
so-
of that was to offset much more.
Then why didn't you bring that up during the budget meeting?
Well, that I will absolutely say that when I realized what the overall impact of the select board's budget decision was, I was appalled. And in fact, I felt like it was the biggest failure of my career. However, on Friday morning, January 30th, I immediately let Trevor know that in addition to using inaccurate staffing numbers to come up with the wage increases, putting that at underfunding that based on our current staffing, I also pointed out that the town's appropriation is going down, the library trustees' contribution was doubled, and requested an emergency meeting so that this could be addressed. Because the impact in fiscal year 27 may be advantageous as far as you all are concerned for the taxpayers. However, fiscal year 28 is going to see a shock.
And it's still, the fact remains, I think, that if you didn't know that the personnel numbers underneath that were underlying the budget that you approved were wrong, that's a problem of one kind. And if you did know, that's a completely different problem, but it's still a problem. You approved a budget that was based on numbers that were wrong.
And you sat here and didn't do anything about it, and then
We
asked us- and then-
requested-
excuse me, I'm still speaking.
Okay.
And then requested us to drop everything that we're doing within 24 hours and do something about it. It's not all on us here either, and it's a little frustrating to say, like, if there was a problem, why didn't you actually plug it in here?
Is there more, so you added staff between your last year count and
No.
next year count?
No,
Okay,
the
so-
spreadsheet, we had last year, for the preceding fiscal year, we had a part-time, this is in your minutes somewhere. We had a part-time person who retired and we moved somebody that was part-time into full-time, and that had an impact on insurance and retirement and all of that kind of stuff. That spreadsheet that included that full-time position is not the one that got used. And Stephanie, with all due respect, the mistake was not the libraries. We got a single sheet from the same single sheet that you had that was the top sheet, and didn't discover how egregious the error was until Amy went back and started plugging your numbers into the real spreadsheet with the accurate personnel numbers. The select board declined, when they knew about it, to address it.
Yep, we were not available in 24 hours to fix it and then rewarn.
Eh,
And so,
Sorry about
Can we go
that.
back and
So-
talk about
so
the
that-
comparison though?
So that just means that you not being available is why the town of Randolph has inaccurate numbers about the library
I mean,
in
you
front
were
of it.
sitting here during the meeting, and if you couldn't check the numbers in real time and then didn't
Why?
bring us up at that point, that's really frustrating to me, Robin.
With all due respect, why should I have to check them? You have had the spreadsheet with all of the tabs, with our budget in it since November.
Then why didn't you point out at that point, like, that we added more money, so just to make things.
You didn't add more money.
You guys agreed to.
We did.
cause the
We
meeting
added
to-
more money because we came in with an ask about salaries that
And
we
then why
knew
didn't
was
you-
a big ask.
And then why didn't you say at that point, we'd like to reduce that so the tax burden is similar to last year? So why wouldn't you have done it in that moment?
At what moment?
What
During your budget
moment?
meeting, when we were
What-
talking about them, like.
What, the moment when I mean, I'm not sure what happened when I left the room coughing and came back and had a lifesaver, but the moment between when there was a motion to do whatever, for the warrant that you approved and that paper got handed out? Which moment are you talking about?
When we were discussing your budget. At what point?
So can we, let's take a step back here. So I'm trying to still understand, so let's wait on that conversation for a minute.
Yeah.
You, 26 budget that we're in right now,
Mm-hmm.
we had, for the assistant librarian, we had 127,000 in there. And then you wanted a 31% increase in that payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same FTEs? Okay, and so that number, 127 then, got the 3.2% increase to it, which is what we had talked about that night. And that's what took you to the 131,000 that's in the budget, that's in the town report. So I'm trying to figure out where, because you said it's because we didn't count all the positions, but if the positions were in there for the 127,000 in this year, are the FTEs are there?
They weren't.
They're not.
Okay, well, you just said they were.
No, she was incorrect. They weren't.
Oh, The budget that we submitted had the correct number of FTEs. The budget that you voted on did not.
Okay, so this year, the library budget has 127,000 for salaries for library assistants. There's more hours going in as library assistants than what's in the budget? Is that what you're saying?
Then the budget that was developed in November of 2024.
I'm
Yes. Things have shifted. since November of 2024.
So you added more positions or more position hours?
More FTE.
Do you agree with that? Just making sure.
I see a blank wall of numbers and go, oh my God. So my ability to pull things up, that is great. The story here remains the same story.
Yeah. I have a comment.
Go ahead.
I wasn't at that meeting because I had a family emergency I needed to attend to, and I'm very sorry I wasn't there. But what we're talking about tonight also seems to be sort of a little bit of a microcosm, probably isn't the right word, of some larger issues around conflict between the select board and the library trustees. And, you know, one of the things which I've noticed is that, well, there's a couple of things, but the one which is really pertinent for this particular conversation, I think, is that the select board and the library trustees have shared responsibility over parts of the operations of the library, whether it's coming up with budgets or taking care of the building or other things. And those roles are not like incredibly well defined. It's not really clear like who has ultimate authority over what part and who, like, there's a lot of gray area when we actually sit down and make decisions about how all this works. And my impression, my understanding of the situation is that most of the conflict that we've had recently is really concerning like how we work through this gray area. And my observation is that the library trustees are doing everything they can to work in the best interests of the library. And the select board is trying to balance those interests with other needs of the community. And that's where we don't always see, I'm talking about board to board, not individuals here. Mm-hmm. That's where we don't always see eye to eye. And I just want to point out to everybody that I've been thinking about this for a long time, and that there's something really not right with the structure that we're all operating within that's causing a lot of it's giving us ground for conflict, which is really unfortunate. Because I think every last person who has been involved in these conversations wants to do the right thing and is trying to have the best possible outcome. But we're stuck in a structure that is almost actively getting in our way. And so this is a whole nother conversation for another time, but I think we need to be talking at some point soon about that structure and either how we change it or how we figure out how to navigate it in a way which feels better for everybody. So I just want to put it out there. I think that a lot of what's happening here is not because somebody is trying to do something to somebody else. That is really not what's going on. It's really that we are kind of all been stuck in a situation which is really not optimal. And everybody is trying to figure out how we navigate our way through this. And I hope that over the next, say, coming months, we can start to figure out how we come up with a better way to work our way through all this stuff.
I think one of the things that has to happen is there needs to be much better roles and responsibilities around that, like by statute, who's responsible for what, by, you know, where are the lines and how does that meld together? And I can say this on my way out, and Robin can say what she wants on her way out too. It's not us that are going to be working this, but I do think this town needs to sit down and have a serious conversation about what the structure of this library is. And, you know, is it a town asset? Is it a nonprofit like a lot of them are going to now? Is it like, what does this look like in the future? Because you're 100% right, Larry. I was just sitting here trying to figure out hours and it got hostile. And like, you can't make forward progress in that environment.
We're all in a tough spot, all of us.
Okay. Well, can you just identify yourself for the record, please?
Right.
Just identify yourself for the record before you speak.
Oh, John Joy, West Randolph.
Mhm.
Anyway, are we done with that project with the library?
We'll never, but.
I was going to bring something else up.
Well, unfortunately, it is the way it's born. This is the numbers that are there. That is the numbers the voters are gonna be voting on. It is an increase in spending authority over the prior year. I still didn't get a complete thing and I can go back and look. There's what those hours are and what that looks like, but I can sort that out from the minutes. So go ahead.
I'd like to bring up the police budget. And how come we've gone from just under $400,000 to pretty near $1 million? So. And is the police budget still involved in just the West Randolph? The police district, which is in West Randolph? Or is it the whole West Randolph, East Randolph, Randolph Center, North Randolph, South Randolph? Because there's money coming out of the general budget for it also? From what I read?
So, I'll take part of this and then you can take it over, Trevor. So when we built the budget, at least a year ago, maybe 2 cycles ago now, we did put some money in the general fund budget to help pay for the police district. And a big piece of that is because the police spend an awful lot of time at the school. And the decision was that it wasn't fair for just the folks in the district to be paying for that. We've had the conversation about a resource officer for the school. They're not interested in it. And so it does fall onto the current police department to go answer those calls. But the conversation was that it made sense for more than just the district to pay that. There are also times when the state police will say they can't get to a call that's right outside the district. And Scott's group will go out and answer those calls. And the thought was that that wasn't fair either for just the district to pay. So it was kind of a back and forth. The number we came up with, there's not a lot of science to it, except it equals about what one officer would cost, which kind of equates to what the school demand is. And so that's sort of why there's money in both budgets to help pay that. As for the increasing in the budget, we had some pretty sweet days when we had a functioning sheriff's department. There was a group that met, they looked at that as an opportunity. And we merged the services in there. It did give a lot of savings for those few years that it worked, but we saw the power of an election. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good result.
But the police district itself is paying the bulk of it, even though it's going outside of the district.
Correct. But
So,
for the bulk of the budget.
right.
Correct. And if you look at the statistics, the schools in the budget is in the district. So that would be an in-district call. I don't know if we've ever sat down and tried to figure out what that percentage is. And some of it is, I've heard in some of these forums and whatnot, people saying, well, we don't need the police. They don't do anything. We can't get the data on it. Well, it's pretty hard for me to tell you exactly how many minutes a call for the police takes, right? Because they may go today and then they got to go interview somebody tomorrow and they got to feed, a report to write the next day, and then they might be in court. There's no way to time that, pull all that information in to give you this case took 5 hours, this case took 15 minutes. What you see in those reports is that they had a call, right? It was a need for service in a kind of a basic category of what it falls into. If you got down into the details of some of those are pretty time consuming and involved. So it's hard to give you better data as far as time it takes for each of those, but you could very easily get a call to the school for an incident. And when they go to investigate it, they're in Northfield because the child is part of the tech center, or they're in Brookfield because the child is part of the high school, and those are all out of district, but the issue started in district. That makes sense. it gets really pretty complex quick,
So why do we have a police district? And it's too.
part of the merger.
It's too, but it seems to me that it would be a whole lot simpler instead of having a budget line that's specific to the village of Randolph and another budget line for the police that's coming out of the general fund, which makes me feel like I'm paying twice. Why not just fund it out of the general fund and abolish the police district altogether? Acknowledging the fact, which would acknowledge the fact that we have a high school that serves all of the towns in the area, and we have an elementary school that serves the towns in, the towns in the area. Why not make the police district consistent with that?
So I can tell you for at least 2 years now, Larry's been involved in some of this for a couple of years. Trevor's been involved. We have been trying to remove the roadblocks that Randolph has experienced in hiring police officers.
Mhm.
We do not have enough officers to cover the demand today with just the district. We cannot even think about going townwide. As soon as we say it's townwide, guess who the number one responder is to every incident townwide? It's our police department. And they cannot get to what they have now. Like the number of hours that Scott is donating to the police district for work outside of his hours that he gets paid for is ridiculous. If you have not seen that guy on the street and thought he's fried, like it's beyond reasonable. And so we know that that's an opportunity and it's a goal, but until we have staff, we're working on legislation. Randolph is one of 3 towns that joined the state retirement system when it came about. It was a great opportunity. They took advantage of it. The problem is the police officers are part of it, and they have to work 30 years to get to retirement. Every other law enforcement officer in the state of Vermont only has to work 20. Where are you going to go to work? Right? We cannot attract officers right now. The outreach has been amazing. The people that we've talked to, we've tried to steal them from other departments, even ones that are failing. We can't get them. Until there's more bodies, there's no way to cover it. And one of the challenges is once we looked at this, the committee, I forget what the numbers were, what it would take for them to provide services townwide. And the actual in-district fees didn't change. There was just an additional fee charged outside to fund the growth that would have to take on the police department to cover that also. So it was pretty intense. I agree with that.
Almost. I would say that the numbers that I saw suggested that because the grand list of the whole town is 3 times the grand list of the district, that we wouldn't need 3 times the number of officers, that it would lower the overall per capita sort of property taxes by a significant amount.
I don't think it did. I thought the district stayed the same, and then there was like a 20-cent surcharge outside of the district.
We had to take them like gas and mileage and more vehicles and all that stuff, so it wasn't just officers extra, it was all the other things that we would need to.
That's the bulk of our expenditures.
Well, no, you're driving so far either, and all the gas.
Changes your dynamics some, but thought it came down, it was a pretty, it didn't change in the district, it changed outside of it. We could find that.
Yeah, that's not my recollection, but
It's,
the point that you made at first, I think, is really the critical point, that we can't even hire enough people to man what we need right here in our little district. And to think that we would go town-wide before we can meet our current needs seems like we're setting ourselves up to be in a bad spot.
And there's incidents too where they're like, we might be first responders to a certain situation, but then we aren't the ones responsible for the investigation. So we might be first on scene what's it called, mutual aid. But then if there's a strong enough of an incident, then the state police actually have to take on that whole entire like paperwork and investigation, all that extra time, depending on what it is and where it is and where it originates from. That, I mean, there was an incident in the village that was 60 to 80 hours after a shooting in town. That was our staff time. A similar incident happened outside of our district. We were first on scene, but we didn't have to do the investigation. And so all that extra like 60, 80 hours time of investigation fell on the state police in that case, not on our police. And so that's where like the staffing issues come into play. If that incident took place, if we took on townwide and that incident took place outside of what is now our district, we would be responsible for those hours. And if we didn't, then we would be in trouble. And so that's where it gets really tough with the staff time. It's not just simply, it's not just showing up to an accident or an incident, being a first responder and handling that situation on an emergency type basis versus having to do all the other work.
You wanted to add something, John?
Yeah, John Kaplan. I have a couple of comments. I don't feel like you really answered Mr. Joy's question about why the police budget has gone up 71% in 4 years. So I'm still curious about that. Like what has been the main driver of that? And I've heard now for a couple of years the comment that we can't hire the number of officers to provide the service even within the district. But kind of taking a step back from that, I don't feel like there has ever been a real community conversation about what people expect from the police. Like, what is that level of service? I have no idea. I've looked at, I've got a list recently from Scott of all of the incidents for 2025, for example. Now, and I realize there's a lot of detail that's not in there. It's just a listing of, whatever, traffic stop, suspicious activity. There's like 90 categories. But looking at that, it's very hard to make a connection between almost $1 million budget and what they're spending their time on. Almost a quarter of those incidents are traffic stops, and that is taking out the highest number, which is listed in those incident reports, which is fingerprinting, which we don't need. I don't believe we need officers to deal with fingerprinting.
It's not officers doing the fingerprint.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, when you get a full listing of all the incident reports, the highest number of those incidents is fingerprinting. So taking that out of the data, the next highest one is traffic stops. That's almost a quarter of the incidents. So personally, I don't feel like almost $1 million to deal with traffic stops is a good expenditure of the town's funds. So I still have the question about why the budget has gone up so much, and getting more specific, the budget that is proposed for next year that we're voting on, I'm assuming well, I guess that's my question. What does that reflect in terms of staffing? If we have now what? We have the chief and then 2 full-time officers. I'm not exactly sure how that gets counted, but. So I guess my question is, what's the level of staffing that we're being asked to pay for in the FY27 budget? And I still have the question about why it's almost doubled in 4 years.
Well, isn't the original, that 400,000-ish number from when we had the Orange County Sheriff?
No.
No.
It's not.
It's not.
No, I went back and looked. The first year, this budget we're being asked to vote on next week is the 4th year of the sort of reconstituted police. In the first year, it was around, I forget the number, but it's gone up 71% in 4 years. And I understand that healthcare costs go up, and that's a big driver.
Well, I think that's most of your answer is costs have increased dramatically in the last few years. And it's a real problem. I mean, policing is very expensive. There aren't a lot of officers out there. Aren't a lot of people going into law enforcement. agencies across the state, across the nation are having a hard time recruiting. We're not alone in this. And yeah, it's getting expensive just to have people be willing to show up to do that work. As a community, we are going to have to decide. I mean, we're going to decide this coming week when we vote. The police provide, I believe, the police provide an enormous amount of value to our community. But that value does have a worth. Like, we're only going to be willing to pay up to a certain amount of money as a community for that service. When does it become so expensive that we give up and say, we just can't do this anymore? I don't really know. I know how I will vote for the budget, but I don't make that decision. We'll make that decision, when we all vote on town meeting day. If costs continue to climb, which most of these costs we really have very little control over. But as costs continue to climb, there may very well be a day when the community decides it's just too expensive. We know it's valuable, but it's not so valuable that we're willing to pay what it requires. And I think that's just kind of where we are.
So I'm still curious about the budget and how many officers that,
My understanding is that the amount of officers that number of FTEs is the same as last year. That we're not increasing the level of service.
Well, no, it's
What's that?
changed some, and Trevor's probably at the full count, but we have a chief that's been there every year. There's an administrative person, Rosemary. There's 2 officers. We do have 1 officer deployed right now. And I believe we chose not to put any salary in, or did we put a portion in?
Just a little.
And then there's 2 part-time positions to help cover because the 1 officer's deployed. That was my understanding of what we had.
So it's chief, and you dispatch 3 FTEs, placeholder for the deployed officer. And then a little bit of part-time capacity. We haven't had much luck finding those either. So we started, actually, the first police district budget to pass was 524 and change. And then the one right after that jumped up to $700,000. And it's got everything from staffing increases to health insurance increases to money for a car, to replace a car eventually. So there's some capital stuff. And this year we've got some dispatch increases. There's some vehicle maintenance increases. So it's the cost of doing business is sort of generally, but we have some of what we've done in years past too, in order to try to get bodies into the budget, but not have the full impact. We've proposed starting officers halfway through the year if we can find them. So sometimes what you're not seeing every year is a full year officer's cost. It might be extra varied depending on what we had in those budgets. So I have to go back and look, see how many of those we've had. But we've used that method before for different budgets.
The cops grant is also not there this year, which is $100,000. You only get it for a certain number of years to start out.
I think another point I'd like to make too is the traffic stop is fairly quick, almost always, not always, but almost always a fairly quick interaction. Versus like a domestic violence situation where you'll see like the domestic violence situation will have one little line and that's it, the same as the traffic. And so when you're balancing, when you're saying a quarter of the calls are traffic, that means that doesn't mean a quarter of our time.
I understand that.
And so, and which one is more valuable for our community too, and protecting vulnerable populations.
I just
Traffic
think,
stops are also used as a way of screening other issues.
I just feel like it's very hard to know, like, I find myself especially being in the police district, so paying the bulk of that budget, often asking myself, what am I getting for this? It's not very clear. And just a quick side note about that, I noticed that there's no report from the police in this year's town report, just kind of disappointing for such a high budget item department. I'm not sure why that is the case, but.
In January, we had 1 officer on duty. That was the chief.
But I feel like there needs to be much more of a community conversation about what level of service people expect, better understanding of what the police are doing. I talk to my neighbors and I haven't talked to anyone who could clearly say, oh, well, they're doing X. So it's a big ask, and then there's the whole police district versus whole town issue, which I think board has kicked that can down the road for several years now. And I don't think, I mean, my understanding, I don't think you discussed it at all this last year.
We did a couple of times actually that we can't find officers. We can't progress that department with no staff in it. And we can't pile more work on them. Like, we are really struggling
But yeah,
with that. Like,
I'd like to
so
understand
John,
more about that.
we just had an officer go out for medical. And that took us to 2. We had 2 officers, 1 deployed, 1 out on medical. One of the other officers went out for a couple weeks. And guess what that left us with? 1, the chief.
Yeah.
And there were
I get
people
that.
complaining that he was not responding quick enough. That their issues weren't being addressed. I know you sit up there and you don't see the, like, everything, and that same with me. I don't see half of what goes on with Scott. But having a conversation with him about what are you guys involved in, what are you doing, where your call's going, it's eye-opening.
I think that
The pieces.
information needs to get out to the people who are paying the bill.
Kind of understand.
It's,
I think it's really tricky. I think that if people would like to know, if they can find Scott, because he is really busy,
Yeah, with
like
that, yeah.
you can certainly talk with him. He's really happy to talk about his work and what he does. I also know that, like, from my perspective, like where I live in my daily life, I don't see the police. I don't interact with them very much, but I'm in the town hall quite a bit, and I see Scott here, and he is commonly talking about all these things that are coming up. But this is not, the things that he's responding to are not things that affect my life. They're not, I'm not interacting with them. It's other people, and it's folks who need a lot of attention, people who are struggling, people who are causing mayhem, people who need to be paid attention to, responding to horrific incidences, which we've had no shortage of recently. All of which, as Stephanie said, are extremely time consuming. I'm really grateful that we've had officers to be here to handle a lot of the really awful stuff that has happened in our community, and to think that we have people in Randolph who know our community, who know the people that they're interacting with, that it's not just somebody coming, some random officer coming from the state barracks who doesn't know what they're getting themselves into. I think it's really easy to not see, like, and again, like, if I wasn't here in this building, if I hadn't had the interactions I've had with our officers, I would not know. I really would not know. But knowing what I know, because I've had that opportunity, I think the value that they bring to our community is really big. And as much as I would really like to save the money on police taxes, which I pay quite a lot of, it makes me really scared to think that we could have no police, and like maybe it would be okay. I suppose there's some possibility of that, but I'm not willing. Like I'm going to vote for the police budget because I'm personally too afraid to want to find out what happens if we have no local police for an extended period of time. The small bits of data that were largely anecdotal for when we did have a gap in police coverage were worrisome to me when we had it. And part of the problem there is that it was all anecdotal data. Like, because we didn't have police, we didn't have the data around like what was happening that wasn't being attended to. But it was kind of alarming. So I appreciate the concern. It is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. And there are so many things we could be doing with that amount of money. But this is the world that we live in. We live in a world where there's sexual abuse, where there's violent crime. We don't have like as much of that here as there are in other places, but it really does. It exists here, where we have vulnerable populations, we have people who need help, and the police are our first folks who are there to support all of us in that work. And I'm really grateful that we, up until this moment, can afford to have that in our community. And maybe there will come a day where we say, enough, we can't do this. I hope we never get there, and I think we need to continue to work towards figuring out how we don't get there. Like Trini said, we're changing our police pension system, hopefully this year, so that we have, it makes it easier to have officers come, and then we can start doing the real hard work of saying, okay, how do we make it less of a burden to people just in the district, and spread that out a little bit.
I also think it's a little hard when it's a vulnerable situation, like we're not going to make a post or what do they, the press releases about a domestic assault or a lot of those things that are really sensitive.
I think
And
some of their stops. They've taken some pretty horrific people off the street and they do press releases on those and they put that out on their
yeah,
page.
there's been a lot of things that I know have happened that haven't been a press release, and I'm really grateful that they were
They
there.
shouldn't be.
Right, exactly. And so, but no one's asking like, well, what are the fire departments doing? What are the ambulance doing? In spite of the police are like, well,
The
what
ambulance is quite a chunk of change
It
too, though.
is.
They just been jacking every year on us.
But they serve, it's very clear that they serve all of the communities, and I think the same is true for the fire departments. The police department, it's, it's a unicorn that's similar to the library trustees, right? It's just different. Its role is defined differently, and the way you pay for it is defined differently, and maybe that's, we're a community. We made the hard decision about it, that we were one community, all the schools and all of the other services. And it was painful. I mean, the consolidating the schools was I moved here in 1980 and they were talking about, they were discussing how to deal with the elementary schools and the cost of 3 smaller buildings. And it took a really long time to make that. My younger child was the first 6th grade in the new elementary school. That's a long time. We're either a community or not. And I think if the answer to that question is yes, we are a community and our services cover all of us, then you really need to take a hard look at what about this is not working.
And I think
we know what's not working.
But I think
Or how to fix it. I phrased that badly. What is it that needs to happen to make it work for everybody?
And I think we've done a lot of that work, and some of it we can't do until we actually start making changes. But I think we've done a lot of the groundwork for it already. But again, we get back to the same spot, which is right now we're in a spot where we can't staff the police district. So come back when we change the pension system and we're able to attract more people who do want to work here, but then find out that they need to work for another 10 years. And so they say, no, thank you, I'll go to some other community. And once we fix that, let's see where we're at. And hopefully that will make the difference that we expect it will. We will fully staff the police department as it is. And then we can use that as a base to move on to the next step. Because I agree with you, Robin.
And when will the pension change?
So Larry introduced a bill last year on it. It got reintroduced this year. It took a year to get the treasurer's office engaged. So the state treasurer's office controls the retirement plans.
Which state level?
And so we had to get them on board because we're in the state retirement system.
We actually have to change state statute for this.
And so it's been hearings on that. Trevor did a lot of work with the treasurer's office on which plan they would let us in and how to make all that work. It is a 5-page bill. It's a big bill to get this changed. But it's there.
also, you have to involve the treasurer's office, so there's a lot of administration, there's a lot of people who need to sign off on it, there's a lot of people who need to look at it. Has to go through the whole legislative process. And so
But
it's just and the legislature only started meeting again in January, so, from last year to when we first were like, we have to do this till now, we couldn't do anything between, May and January, so here we are in middle of February, and the bill has been, started taking testimony in House Gov Ops last week. And I don't think it's a controversial bill. I think it's gonna not have any problem getting through. It'll go over to the Senate. And then hopefully sometime in the next couple of months.
It doesn't take effect before January 27, right?
It'll take. Well,
It
that's a good
won't take
question.
effect on July 1, but the January 1 date is for, there's an opt-in process. So if we have a senior officer who's been in Easters and Beamers, it may not make sense for him to opt into that plan at this point in his career, whereas the deployed officer and the other officers aren't even invested in the system, so then they'll move over. So just give people some time to sort out if they want to stay where they are, if they're in a pool already, or to opt into the new one. But then after January 1, anybody who's hired from that point forward is automatically into this program.
The treasurer's office has to come out and counsel each employee on what the impacts are and what the choices, but we did also find out that there's another group that thought they were gonna ride on our coattails, but there's quite a few in it. They were taking testimony from them this week, but we don't expect they're gonna drag us down waiting for them. Because the volume, we're talking 3 officers to make the change.
Would it help to have more people?
No,
No.
because we're 3 officers, we're a very minimal blip in what's going on in their world. And so we hope to just cruise in there. The other group has 1,100, so what they told us in it. That's gonna need a fiduciary study and a whole bunch of stuff to be able to make that one happen. So a lot more involved, a lot more pieces. But it is pretty complex, some of this stuff, once you start digging into it, of what it takes. But Tamara?
Tamara Morgan, East Randolph. I'm not changing the subject, but a lot of this brings to mind. I think that you guys would be so well served by getting this information more transparently out into the public eye. Like really, I know the town doesn't have the ability to have like a press officer or what have you, but something where everybody understands. If they don't have front porch forum or don't look at it or don't look at the minutes or don't come to the meetings, everybody still needs to know what you guys are struggling with, what the discussions are, what the complications are. It's not easy to create that kind of information that's comprehensive but clear. So that people really understand what the police budget is really all about and what value the police bring to the town. Or any of the other issues that you guys deal with. And that's been, it's just hard, I know, to get that information out there. And I wouldn't want to put another burden on you guys. I would suggest that you need to be paid more. That is something.
I think there ought to be a moratorium on that, because in the 14.5 years I've done it, it's been the same pay.
I know.
And it's not a livable wage, if anybody. We're not meeting any of our
We're
goals.
essentially voluntary.
I think I figured it out one year, and it was extremely low per hour for the hours I put in that year. It was,
20%.
I think it was the year I trained Adolfo and all that, so I was like a shadow employee here at the same time, and yeah, I bet it was lower than 25 cents.
Oh, I believe that.
So, but yeah, it's complicated, you're right. And by the time you put the time into doing the work, the last thing you want to do is try to sit down and write it out
Explain to
and
somebody else.
and whatnot. If somebody wants to come sit or call and ask a question, I'll spend all the time they need to understand it. I've done it many times, but to try to write a press release on it, I'm gonna put something in there that's not gonna go well, and I'm gonna get hung for that, so.
It is really hard. If you have ideas, I would love to hear it. But you know, it's not just about the police. It's like
Oh, no.
everything that happens in this building.
Everything.
Like when I first got on the select board, I knew very little about our municipal government. And I was very quickly astonished at how much work it takes to keep our municipal services up and running. And from a person who doesn't see what's going on inside the building, it's very easy to think, what are these people doing? Like, why is this so difficult? Like, why do we need to spend this much money on recreation? Why do we need to we spend half our, I think overall we spend, not including the police, like half our budget on roads. Like, why is that so expensive? Where's all that money going? Like, it doesn't seem reasonable. But once you start digging into it and you realize like what it really takes to do all these things, all the laws that need to be followed, the regulations, the interactions with the state, and just the sheer amount of work. Like, I don't know, in my personal life, I always think something's going to take me so amount of time, and then I double it, and then it takes me longer than that, right? It's like that, but like in an area where you don't even know what you're talking about. And so it's a real problem with public perception in terms of government. And I think, you know, I hear it as a state legislature about our state government all the time. Like, why do we need this? Why does this department need this much money? And it's like, well, once you start actually looking at what the government is doing moment to moment, person by person, yes, of course, there's things which aren't done properly. There's waste in places. Any big endeavor never goes 100% efficiently. But for the most part, like, things are just really time consuming and hard. And should we be getting better at it? Should we constantly be looking for improvements? Of course. But like, it's hard to know from the outside, like what it really requires to make like the stuff happen that we take for granted mostly every day we go about our work, our lives.
And it's not just at the town level, like, it's everywhere. It's at the state level. My 36 years there, I can tell you.
Jessamyn's had her virtual hand raised for a bit. We're ready to.
Your turn,
Great, thank you. Yeah, 20 minutes or so, it's fine. I was just thinking about I noticed the warning has another vote on moving all the votes to Australian ballot, and I feel like we voted no on that, I believe 2 years in a row. And I'm wondering if it's just gonna keep coming up on the agenda every year, or if eventually we can stop having it on the agenda at town meeting. Thank you.
Well, traditions are traditions, right? I mean, we didn't do it last year though, right?
I think it was. So Jasmine, that was a request that was put out for that. And some of it was, there was a lot of thought that folks didn't understand completely what was being asked. And
A
so.
request by whom? Request by whom?
Was it a petition article?
I had suggested putting it back on because I was talking to some folks from neighboring towns about their town meeting, and it's not to get rid of town meeting. It's to change the vote because we have such a higher percentage of participation by ballot than we do at town meeting. And town meeting is a great way, I think, to have the community come together and talk about things. But unless we're voting about very important things and possibly taking 3 days to do it, which nobody has time to do, people aren't even able to come on a Tuesday night or a Saturday morning, or, you know, like, we've tried different things to get more people to come. And we're not even getting 2% of our population coming. And that's not right. Like, Bethel gets 30% of their population, and they talk about their budget, and they're a small town and they're able to get through it. And it's amazing tradition and thing. We have 4 times the population and we only get less than 100 people come.
The thought on it is it gives more people a say on the issues that don't have the ability to be there on that day. You can still talk about it. You can still have a really good discussion. You can do all kinds of stuff, but it was more to allow more people to have a say in the actual vote on the.
But doesn't it just let the small group of people make the decision about that? And haven't they already spoken twice?
Well, that's the problem, right? The way the law works, it's the ones at town meeting that have to vote to make that change. And so,
We only did it once, right? We didn't do it last year, did we?
We did it last year. I counted those votes.
No,
No,
didn't
not
do it
last
last year.
No, the
It
year
was 2
before,
years
yeah.
ago.
2 years ago, we only did it once. So we're making every other year thing, Jessica.
Oh, okay.
I guess the other piece is that every year, that's one of the select board's duties is to, you know, decide on what goes on our annual town meeting warning. And so we even if we wanted to, we couldn't decide now what would be for next year. It's going to be a new board, and that board will decide what we'll do. That'll come up again.
yeah, and I think there's some merit to it. I think there needs to be a little more information out there about it and what, you know, what it's trying to do. We're not, I mean, it would be great if we could have a meeting where we talked about the issues and then had like, I think the pie idea that somebody had was a great one. Man, you might go get a nice piece of pie and especially warm it up with some homemade ice cream and, yeah, we haven't had dinner yet. Done?
I have an observation. I used to come to these meetings all the time, at the select board meetings. And then there was at one time, a few years ago, you had a member of the select board who was the chair for you.
That was quite a
And
few
you'd
years
have
ago.
comments. That would be at the town meeting also. There, you would fill the hall with people.
Mhm.
And I'd come to this meeting here and you'd have public comments and they would say, thank you, and move on. And that turned a lot of people off that were coming to this venue. And I think that's what happened. Part of it was what happened at town meeting too, because people would stand up and ask a question. And they would say, the board would stand up and say, thank you for your comment, and move on. They wouldn't elaborate on anything that the question was. And that's my observation from what
Yeah.
I observed over the years.
So we're in a tough spot right now, John, with that to some extent, because if you look at, some of the rules of procedure and the open meeting laws and the way meetings are supposed to go and all that, the public comment, if in the traditional sense, is turning more into that type of a thing. Because it's not an item that's on the agenda. So you're not supposed to have a whole conversation about it. You're not supposed to engage because somebody else who has an interest might like to be there, but it wasn't on the warning, so they can't be there. And so you're not supposed to have that back and forth because now you've taken the topic up and you're discussing it as a board. So we've kind of given ourselves open meeting laws in the state, and they basically minimized our ability to have a real conversation with our community. And you
I'm
can
just saying
see,
it turns some people off.
yeah, and it should. It should. A lot of the time, if you could sit down and have a conversation about a topic and address it right then, it's behind you and you move forward. But when you say, thanks for the topic, we'll take it under consideration, it ticks you off, but you may not realize that's all I can say to you. And I don't care right now because this is my last meeting. Right me up.
Hang on to the final
I didn't want you to leave early.
We're going to see you Saturday morning.
I'm in the air on that one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Not done.
What's going on Saturday morning?
We're not done until Tuesday.
Well, you know what, over the years, I think you could count on one hand the number of meetings I've missed in 14 and a half years, and I have 9 people gonna be at our camp. And I'm running the chase vehicle and they're riding snow machines up on Friday, so they may have to wait till Saturday afternoon to get their supplies, but it's the way it works. So, yeah,
I have to go, but can I just say something briefly? I work with the rec department and I work very closely with the police and the library. I think a lot of these conversations are interchangeable with both discussions. Didn't want to bring that up, but it's just been really interesting to listen to us. And also, thank you all for the work that you put in, because it is not easy to sit at a table once a month or more and get these questions and talk about this stuff with people. So I just want to broadly say thank you for what you all do in this capacity, because it's literally thankless work. So just. Yeah, I just want to make it really clear, like, thank you.
or you'll be back. Do you have any other questions? This comment online says Judy gets a shout out. Thank you, Judy.
So, Jessamine was saying us we had some other Zoom related issues that we were scrambling to fix before the meeting, so just making sure Judy got shout out for helping with part.
The new IT person in town. That's
Well, helping websites is no fun.
I am not an IT person at all. I'm very fortunate in my job. I can pick up the phone and be like, hey, I did it again. Yeah.
So if the police budget doesn't get passed, what happens? That's it. That's the end of it. You don't go back and try to.
So the select board can try again. They can generate a new budget and do a special ballot to get it passed. But I can tell you there's nothing extra in there.
No,
I'm not sure what'll
I can't
get cut
vote
out.
on it.
It's,
And same with the library. If it doesn't get passed,
well,
they go
I
back and try to come back with another.
try it
one.
again. Yep. Any of the line items except special appropriations, right? They don't get another shot. They get one and done.
And it's expensive to have a special ballot.
Yes, it is. Yep. Yep. I think though, if people are looking at the police budget, they ought to look long and hard at who we have in the police department. And a budget not passing, those employees won't be here. And we will not resurrect the police department again. The amount of work that took when we could find employees, if you don't have employees and you try to resurrect that sucker, it ain't coming back. It goes away again. You're waiting on the state police. All the personal stuff that happens is gone. Yep. You know, Larry's comment about knowing who is coming, knowing who will be there to help your child that has an issue or your neighbor. You're gonna get whichever guy comes from the state police. And I'm not saying there'd be bad guys, you just won't know them. And when they get there an hour and a half after you call, you may be so angry you don't want to know them to begin with, but that's unfortunately they're short staffed too. You know, in testimony, I said it and I meant it. Like, the kids aren't dressing up as police officers anymore for Halloween. There are no kids looking, except my granddaughter, that want to be a police officer. And I know. She's in first grade, so we're getting there. But it's not a profession right now people want to go into. And so you're not getting the recruits out of college. You're not getting, you're literally, Scott explained it when we had the committee looking at how to set this up the best. He said it's one pond and we're all fishing for the same fish. And that's what you're doing. You're stealing them from somebody else. But it's tough. You actually look pretty good today.
I wasn't going to work today, but yeah. I've been here all day.
Crazy. It's crazy. All right, any more questions? Anything else in the town report? Henry?
I have two very quick questions. Can you confirm that Chris's salary is split between water and wastewater? Correct. And Alex's is split between zoning and what?
Just one amount in the planning and zoning line, it's a contract.
Planning and zoning is together.
He only makes $65,000.
For his
He's a-
contract, yeah.
He's a contract for 2 days a week. He's not an employee.
Got it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn? What?
I just want to say that I think this meeting was longer than every single other pre-town meeting we've had combined since I've been on the select board. These are usually 5 minutes, maybe.
Sometimes absolutely nobody is here.
I think last year, like 5 people showed up and no one asked a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was here.
yeah. Yeah, that's why I thought I was gonna get my kids wrestling,
Well,
but
you know, having the forum the other night was a great thing. And I think that, well, for me personally, that really said, okay, this year I have to go to the budget meeting.
Mm,
I have to hear about this. And it's been very illuminating. And
Yeah,
Tamara's right. If there was a way we could just, but you know, people don't count, people don't read, people don't.
it's on TV.
You know what you do? If you advertise something on the agenda, you know it's gonna just light them on fire and you remove it just before the meeting. And then they're all here.
That's your parting wisdom.
And I want to make it clear that I'm really glad, like, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm really glad people showed up, but we had these some really important conversations, discussions about big issues. It's great.
Thanks.
motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
I
Aye. With Barry's. Thanks, everybody.